Everyone, Sanford and Lindahl giving this thing a run for the first time here. Mike, we're going to be doing a few football-heavy podcasts as, the big bosses like us to do more for less whenever they can get it. Getting ready to hear from Sean Payton a little bit later on today. Where are you at? You know what? Here's what I want to start with since this is draft season. Biggest lie you've been told, you think, so far? What's the biggest lie we've been told draft-related?
Oh, man, I did think that the biggest lie that at least related to the Broncos was going to be the fact that Sean Payton, at the NFL owners meetings did say that it's very possible that the Broncos might trade up. And while I think there was a lot of information that was leading us to believe that wasn't the case over the last month, it's starting to seem like it might end up being a reality. There's a little bit more heat picking up with the chance of the Broncos getting into a top 3 or top 4 spot. And there's some rumors even that leaked today that they think that the Broncos are going to get into the top 4 and do find their quarterback of the future.
I don't know. Look, I don't like the idea. I just don't like the idea, Mike. You and I've talked about it before. I mean, who are you going to get? See, to me, with what it's likely going to cost you, unless you get the bargain of the century, I guess I'll be clear that way. If you're somehow getting the bargain of the century, you're giving up like this year's first, a middle of the road, Cortland Sutton, who I won't call middle of the road, but certainly a guy that you might need to prepare to live without anyway.
A very solid wide receiver too. That's who Cortland Sutton is. A really solid wide receiver too.
Yeah, I mean, my point just being that, they cannot. How are you going to make the quarterback look better if you can't draft anybody to help him? That's what I don't understand about all of this, Mike, is that if you have to give up future number ones to go get the 4th guy in the draft, if you're at 4, you're getting 4th off the board. Legwald says it. I love the phrasing of it. If you don't get to control the board, why do you sacrifice that much capital?
The problem I have with the Broncos moving up, and it seems like the Broncos, by all accounts, would move up for J.J. McCarthy, is that I don't know that J.J. McCarthy in any other draft year would be a top 3 value or top 4 value player. I think there still is development with J.J. McCarthy. He hasn't played in a high volume passing offense. There's going to be a learning curve no matter what for any rookie going to the National Football League as a quarterback and starting most likely in his first year. But then I also don't like the fact that the Broncos, over the course of the last 3 years, have leveraged their future number 1s and number 2s for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. And you're just going to continue that trend, and that trend's going to continue for how long? And at some point, how are you going to get your roster to be worthy of being a contender if you don't have draft capital in any future drafts?
Well, and again, Mike, that's part of the reason that they're in the position that they're in. The roster sucks right now, period. Nate and I were doing, for those that don't know, do a show with Nate Kreckman. Nate and I were doing the exercise because we asked Leggy one day, who could you get on the roster to acquire that second rounder, right? Because the second rounder is something that you desperately need. Who could you give up in order to keep your number 12, possibly draft a really good player, especially if the quarterbacks get overdrafted, and we know they're going to get overdrafted because that's what happens, and still get a second round pick? We couldn't really come up with many people, frankly. We couldn't come up with anyone outside of Surtain. Cortland Sutton in a normal world's not going for a number 2. Maybe at the trade deadline. I mean, there was a rumor kicking around that allegedly the Broncos said no to a number 2 for Jerry Jeudy at the deadline. I'm not sure I buy that. I hate to question people's sources, but you weren't going to take a number 2 for Jerry Jeudy last year? So I don't even know who they have that can get a number 2 at this point. And that just tells you how bad the roster really, really is. You don't have 3 or 4 guys that could at least acquire you what would be a, quote, premium pick in the draft. That tells you your roster is devoid of talent, period. And look, man, they still don't know who's going number 2 right now, Mike. The Commanders had in 4 quarterbacks at one time the other day, and the word is they allegedly still don't know who they're going to pick. Like, if you're going to make this move, you got to wait and see who falls first, right? Do you think they would take any of the big 4? Is there such a big 4?
Man, that's a really good question. And I think that you have to, the only thing that we can do, Andy, because we don't know anything, and the Broncos are doing a very good job of keeping this thing very tight to the vest. I mean, this thing is, it is airtight. And I think most NFL franchises are doing that. I think even the Chicago Bears were doing that as long as they held on to Justin Fields. There was a threat of, keeping Justin Fields and then going nuclear on the draft and trading back picks and being able to get all the skill talent that you could think of. But I think right now that I truly believe in my heart of hearts, based off the evaluations I've done, that Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 and Jaden Daniels is going number 2 to the Washington Commanders. And I think that that is the only thing that makes perfect sense. There is no other scenario in which I see quarterbacks 3, 4, and 5 going above the Heisman Trophy winner, who's tall, athletic, makes all the wow throws in Jaden Daniels, and also has the athleticism to play very similar to a Lamar Jackson at times. Just hasn't really learned to protect himself. That's the big question. The one that's the big X factor to me is Drake May, because I think Drake May, outside of Michael Penix Jr., is probably the most polarizing figure in this draft. Some people love him and think he should have been number 1 overall. And then guys like me see that he has so much developmental needs before he becomes a really valuable starter in the National Football League. And there's a debate that has always been about the quarterback success rate of first rounders, of top 10 picks. Is it the nature that they, what they are as an athlete, what they are as a talent, or is it the nurture, meaning how they come into the National Football League? What's their surrounding cast? What's the stability of their coaching staff? And for a guy like Drake May, he absolutely needs the nurture part. And that's where I think the best fit for him would be the Minnesota Vikings. And I think the Vikings end up getting into a position to go get Drake May, period. And I think that he's probably going to be available. I still think that the New England Patriots, I wouldn't be surprised if they stay and draft JJ McCarthy at 3. Michigan man. He has all the intangibles of being a great leader. He's a winner. He finds ways to just win football games, even if he's asked not to do a whole lot. That's how I see this thing going. But I also think there's a lot of smoke screens that are being sent out right now in real time. And so none of us know until next Thursday. And I'm excited for it. I think there's so many quarterback starved teams, Andy. There's so many quarterback starved teams that have so much more capital on their current roster and their draft capital. I just don't see a world that exists where the Broncos are willing or even able to get into the conversation of getting quarterbacks 1 through 4.
Okay, who do you think the trigger quarterback is? Because let's be honest about it. If this magic deal we keep hearing about was going to get done because they loved whoever they could get, they'd make it already. They'd do it. It'd be done. They'd know they have it. They could do the visits. They could start the agent negotiating, all that kind of stuff. To me, the fact that so many, in Minnesota included, I think there's a trigger guy for them to trigger the trade. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you'd be at 4 already. If you loved whoever fell to you, then you'd already be there. The trade would be over. Everybody would be planning their lives accordingly, but it hasn't happened yet. For the Broncos, who do you think that quarterback is? Do you think McCarthy is the guy? Do you think because of the rumors about May, we've heard about him being in love, him being Sean Payton, in love with just about everybody, it feels like, in the top 4 at one point or another. But McCarthy and May both have gotten some pretty significant run. So who do you think is the trigger guy, I'll call him, for them to actually try a trade if this is true?
I think it's JJ McCarthy. It has to be JJ McCarthy. And there's a world that does exist where JJ McCarthy drops out of the top, certainly out of the top 5. The question that I have is are the Giants, because they were the first team that was rumored to say in the top 10, we're taking JJ McCarthy if he's available at 6. I heard that at the Combine. I heard that on pretty good sources. It wasn't just rumors floating around in Radio Row. It was from pretty good sources that the Giants love JJ McCarthy. And you could say, well, the Giants went out and, they kind of bolstered their quarterback room with Drew Lock, and they still have Danny Dimes on contract. And man, I think that they're so unsettled at the quarterback position that I could see them taking him. But that could be a position where the Broncos could get up to 6 with a team like the New York Giants and say, let's do business. I just don't think if a team is willing to get into the top 4 for these top 4 quarterbacks, I don't think that the Broncos would have enough firepower to get in that group. if there are 4 teams right now ahead of the Broncos with more capital that are going to be in that top 4.
All right, then. Let's say they stay at 12. Right now, when we asked Jeff Legwald yesterday what would be most likely, trade up, trade back, stay at 12, he still thinks staying at 12 is where the money should be. Do you think, you and I both, I guess for whoever may be new on here, I'm now in your boat with Penix. If they're going to take a swing at somebody, frankly, even over J.J. McCarthy, I'd take the swing with Penix myself. I just hear so many vastly different opinions about JJ McCarthy that I'm just, the accuracy, the stuff you and I have talked about on the air at Altitude Radio, it just makes me, I don't know, I'm not in there yet. I'm not to that point yet. I'd take the shot with Penix. Who's your top guy as we're a week out? You and I think we'll be doing a show a week from tonight with DMAC. We got to wait and get that final schedule for the Avalanche. We'll see if they're playing. I know the Nuggets are playing Thursday too, but we're hopefully trying to fit some kind of show in. So stay with us. We'll give you more plans on that later. But a week from tonight, who are you hoping for? They're sitting at 12. How do you think the board falls, and who do you think would be the guy?
If I were the head coach or the general manager, I'm going Michael Penix Jr. I'm very clear on that. I've been clear on that for quite some time. That opinion that I had from coaching against him, from watching every single game this season of the Washington Huskies and what he did in that program, and from watching him at Indiana, seeing what he did there and making a team that has never been successful into a legit contender in the COVID year in 2020. I just think that he has by far the greatest talent to value. His value would be so significant in terms of being what a quarterback needs to be good at, which is throwing the football from the pocket. The problem that I see here is that I'm not the quarterback coach. I'm not the head coach. And I just don't know that Sean Payton and company see Michael Penix Jr. with the style of offense that they want to run as the perfect fit. Michael Penix Jr.'s greatest traits is the vertical passing game and throwing the ball down the field. I don't know if that's exactly who Sean Payton wants to be, particularly in this next season. He wants to establish a rhythm-based, timing-based, rhythm-based passing game. Take what the defense gives you, play on complete schedule insofar as those plays are available. And I do think Michael Penix is capable of doing that, but I just think that the Broncos ultimately are going to take the best player available and stand pat at 12. And I think that's going to be Brock Bowers, if available, or if one of these top 3 receivers, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, or Marvin Harrison Jr., clearly he's not going to drop to 12. But if one of those top 3 receivers is available at 12, you'd be absolutely asinine not to take one of those receivers at number 12.
Okay, I'm also
a receiver 1. You don't have anything that resembles a true 1. And frankly, when's the last time that the Denver Broncos have had a 1 receiver?
Demaryius Thomas, guy behind me right there. That dude on the wall. That's it. They haven't had one since. It's that simple. Real quickly, I don't know why I'm saying real quickly. We got plenty of time.
No commercial breaks.
No commercial break. I know. I'm trying to figure out, hey, what do I got to tease before we go to commercial break? Mike, let's say there's an off the top O lineman, or at least one of the top 2 O linemen, and one of the top 1 or 2 corners is up there. Who are you taking?
If there's the number 1 lineman for what I see the Broncos wanting to do, outside zone, have a decent mix in the run game, a little bit of power, a little bit of counter, but really the outside zone, the play action off of outside zone. The best guy in the draft for sure is Joe Alt. There's no questions about it. I think that the first O lineman off the board is actually going to be J.C. Latham, big bruiser, massive human being from Alabama. But in reality, I think the Broncos would be in the Troy Fautanu from University of Washington, super athlete, great pass protector, can play the outside zone game. I just think that those 3 O linemen, you want to get a tackle. I think those 3 O linemen would be worthy of that type of a pick. Did I lose you, Andy? Hey, for those on Twitch, I think we're going to keep rolling here. Were you able to hear my last statements, or is that a me issue? I think that my man Andy Lindahl is going into the back of the studio, going to get his Wi-Fi settled. But I think there's so many different things that you can look at with this draft. And, there's so many arguments to be made, whether you have to just focus on whatever quarterback that you can get with that first pick, do whatever you can to get into that position and move that direction. Or you got to say, are these quarterbacks overvalued in this particular draft? I don't think that, but I think that if you draft a guy like Bo Nix, based off the evaluations that I've made at 12, that's an overvalue, and you're overdrafting a player that probably in any other draft class after the entire evaluation process would most likely drop to the second or third round. And that's what his grade is. His grade is a second or third round quarterback. And so I think that, Michael Penix, there's people that see him as a top 10, top 15 talent. But then there's people that say that the injury history drops him down to a second and third round grade. So I think there's so many different things. And this is Flax right here, goes into this question here. Why does Rattler seem like a wasted pick versus a better pick in 25? I've known Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler he's a very polarizing figure in this draft as well. I've evaluated him in high school. It goes all the way back to his time in Arizona. I've watched him throw then. The thing about Spencer Rattler is very refined. He's been a part of quarterback training since the guy was like in 5th or 6th grade. So when he's in the setting of a combine and he's just throwing routes on air, he's in, throwing one-on-one routes and 7-on-7 at a Senior Bowl, the young man, he shines. There's no question. He's very clean in his throwing process. That's what he does incredibly well. He has played under Logan's at South Carolina, former NFL offensive coordinator. He's played in a true pro style offense. The problem that I see with Spencer Rattler is this. Spencer Rattler was at Oklahoma. He was the poster boy of NIL in the first class of NIL recruitment. He underdelivered, at Oklahoma, certainly got beat out by who's now the first pick of the draft. You can understand getting beat out by Caleb Williams. But then Spencer Rattler goes to South Carolina, has a pretty good first year. And this last year, it was very uneven. The film itself and his decision-making, his ability to be, a great maestro of the offense, I think that's questionable. The other thing about Spencer Rattler, when you stand next to him in person, man, he is short. Russell Wilson's taller than Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler doesn't have a lot of the physical attributes as an athlete that a guy like Russell Wilson does have. I don't think that you're upgrading your quarterback position whatsoever, moving on from a Russell Wilson later in his career to a Spencer Rattler in his rookie year. I do think Spencer Rattler will be a very good backup in the National Football League, but you don't want to get just another good backup. You got that in Jarrett Stidham. You could say just let him compete, but if you do get a Spencer Rattler, the value on a Spencer Rattler to me is in the late third or early 4th round at the very highest. I don't think that he has all the different things required of a quarterback to be worthy of a rookie starting in his first year. Go to the text thread here. Does this team need a flyer on a Rattler or running back? So we already talked about Spencer Rattler, a running back in the 3rd round, in your opinion. Yes, I think that this Broncos offense needs as many players that are capable of creating explosive plays and touchdowns. And that's been a problem. And frankly, I think that's part of the problem for why Russell Wilson wasn't the success that everybody hoped that he would be. And frankly, for what the, franchise invested in a guy like Russell Wilson, trading away all the future picks, really hemorrhaging your salary cap for the next 2 seasons. It's that there weren't enough guys that could catch a 5, 7, 8 yard pass and turn it into a 50-yard gain and a touchdown. So I think that's a real concern. I'm going to check here. I think I'm getting a text here from Andy Lindahl. His internet is apparently down, update in real time. So I'm going to run a one-man show here. But the running back position, I was impressed with the running back position, particularly in this combine. And, I think a Blake Corum, if there's any way that Blake Corum is available in the 3rd round, he's a franchise altering caliber of a running back. And the footwork, the yards after contact, catching the ball out of the backfield, he showed that he could do that at the combine. Blake Corum would be an absolute a slam dunk, a home run. I think you need a bell cow. even in the third round. If that's a pick that you can get in the third round, you want to find somebody better than Javonte Williams and push Javonte Williams, because Javonte Williams at his absolute best certainly has the ability to be a very good running back in the National Football League. But it's just showed up over time throughout the course of last season that the injury history is kind of catching up to him. Did he return to play a little bit too quickly? It appears that would have been the case. So I think Javonte Williams is a player that has value on the roster still, but right now there's so many unknowns. I'd put him as a player that's slightly above a guy like Greg Dulcich, where the injury history just makes you not feel very good and doesn't give you all the warm and fuzzies when you go to bed at night about the future of the tight end position and running back position. Jaleel McLaughlin, I think he's the kind of back that, in this combine class, this draft class, I saw a player that reminds me of a Jaleel McLaughlin and in Bucky Irving, a real big weapon in the passing game. I don't think that the Broncos need to draft that type of player, a gadget type running back. They have a perfect guy in Jaleel. I don't know if Jaleel will ever be your true bell cow, number one back, your starter, your first and second down between the tackles consistently, the guy that gets 20 some odd carries per game. I don't know if his body will hold up to it. I don't know if he's got the true power to be able to make those yards. Andy Lindahl is calling. So we're going to see what Andy's got here. Andy, you're on your conversation's live on the air right now. Is your internet down? Okay. All right. Yeah, just rejoin when it's time and we'll keep rolling. All right. I'm going to get to Creaky 81. Sorry about that. That's the thing about live streaming, man. You can have normal conversations with your buddy Andy Lindahl off the air. Really, it's on the air. So the question here from Creaky 81 is, I thought Russ didn't want to be a run-first quarterback. Well, I think Russ didn't want that. And I've said that on air, that this the way that this season went, I think is a microcosm of where Russell Wilson is at his current state in his career. I think that Russell Wilson, he thrives and always has thrived in a very good run game. When you had Marshawn Lynch and the beast mode style of running the football, that makes Russ a very viable threat, because when you have an established run game, particularly off the wide zone, the outside zone, all of your bootlegs and nakeds set up a whole heck of a lot better. And that's frankly what Russ does best. Russ is best when he's on the move. He is not a drop back 5-7 step from the pocket quarterback that is going to be a fit for a guy like Sean Payton. It never was going to be a fit. And I think that Sean Payton probably knew that from the very beginning. He knows the league. He knows the play style of quarterbacks. But the NFL's moved to this wide zone Shanahan, and I'm talking about the Kyle Shanahan style of play, where you don't need an elite pocket passer. Brock Purdy is exactly that same guy. Is he the guy that's going to wow you with his arm? Absolutely not. Is he the guy that can move, make plays off schedule, run the play action game, get you to the right plays in the run game? You bet. And so I think that's where Russell Wilson, frankly, the hard part about Russ, as much as he is maligned here in Denver, is that I think Russell Wilson's going to have some success in Pittsburgh, because that's the style of play that they want to run with. They have Jalen Warren and Najee Harris and a very good offensive line with enough receivers and Pickens. And I think that the Steelers might end up making a draft at receiver. I've heard them, being involved in some receivers potentially even via trade in this draft. So I think that Russell's going to have some success. And we are rejoined by the man, the myth, the legend. Some call him Angry Andy. I know him as just Andy, the great guy, man.
Yeah, internet troubles. Anyway, I'm glad you kept it going. All right. So, I mean, you know what? I literally lost it all. Sorry, folks. This isn't fun. At least when we do this on a radio show, we're all in the same studio. I left off with you talking about Joe Alt. That's where I kind of lost you. And then I could see now you've ventured into other territories.
Yeah, so we went Spencer Rattler. We've gone my evaluation of Spencer Rattler, his value, which I think anything before the mid-third would be a complete overdraft. I think he's probably worthy of a fourth or fifth. He's a career backup that will he'll make some plays in the preseason. Everybody think he's doing really well, but he's not a 17-game starter in the National Football League. We talked a little bit about the running back position. about, giving, and I want to get your take on that, Andy. Where are you at right now with the backfield with Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin? It looks like Samaje Perine's back. Do the Broncos say in the third round, would a running back be if you have him graded as a true second or third round type player, would a running back be a good pick in the third round?
I think he would. Look at what Sean Payton did with Alvin Kamara, right? I mean, and that was a third round guy when I remember, because he was in Christian McCaffrey's same draft class. I had asked Jeff Legwold that year, give me your poor man's Christian McCaffrey. He said Alvin Kamara. This is a guy that would work great in any offense. Mike, I'm for any pick that brings them playmakers. We can argue about quarterbacks all we want to all day, and Sean Payton's system and this, that, the other. I know this. The system doesn't matter if you don't have playmakers. I don't have to tell you. You're a former play caller. You've got to have that dude you can get the ball to and something special happens. I still think that Javonte has shown himself to be a pretty good workhorse back. But, is the speed ever going to come back when he breaks a tackle? Is he really going to be able to separate again? I don't know. Perine was fine, but he had a little bit of the fumbling problems last year. And Jaleel McLaughlin, I don't know. We'll see. He showed us some stuff in camp. I don't know that Mike, here's going to be the interesting thing. Draft some playmakers, get them on the field. Please make the offense interesting, right?
Absolutely. He's
got to play rookies, though. I got so tired of hearing that. Maybe you can translate for me. What was all this? Well, we can't play Marvin Mims. He plays Jerry Jeudy's spot. Well, Jerry Jeudy isn't doing anything for you. So and by the way, you don't have a 3 wide receiver set that allows Marvin Mims on the field. Like, again, what's going to be interesting about this is what Sean Payton has dedicated himself to by all the stuff they've done this offseason is you've got to play your rookies. If you're not going to play your rookies, then what does it matter? And he's old school Bill Parcells. Rookies don't play for me. They got to earn their keep. All right, dude, but that's not the new league right now. If you get a Brock Bowers at 12, his ass better well be on the field. I know that. I don't want any excuses why he's not on the field if he's healthy. Marvin Mims needs to play. I'd love to see a running, just anything to bring me some excitement. They got no explosiveness, Mike. None.
Help me out with this, Andy. There was an album from either a punk rock band or a grunge band from the 90s, I believe, where the title of the album was "The Kids Are All Right."
Yeah, Offspring.
Who was Offspring? Yeah. I would call next season a success if we can get out of the season and at the end of the year, not going to be making a deep run into the postseason, but you just can say the kids are all right.
Yeah.
That's what I want to feel. That's what I want to feel. That's
exactly what it should be. Because here's my thing. And again, we don't need to rehash the Russ stuff. Maybe we'll get an episode where we do that. I still think you did it a year too early. Okay. You could have, but because again, by what you did with the Russ stuff is you killed any momentum you had at the end of last year. Now we don't know what you are. Now we don't know what you got coming up. I get Russ did whatever he did to annoy the hell out of everybody in that building. And look, in some ways I get it. Russ is he was cheesy. The fan base wasn't feeling him right away. All his antics on Instagram and the other social medias got to a lot of people. So yeah, there was a lot of that I understood. The thing I never understood is why we're now swallowing the 53 mil hole right now that's leading to you not signing anybody and you being constricted, all that other stuff. But you got, to your point, like the Rockies don't have it right now, right? We had a conversation yesterday on our show. Who's coming up through the system you're excited to see? All I want by the end of this Broncos season more than wins is who am I excited to watch next year? At one point they had that when they had a Javonte Williams after his rookie year. He was pretty exciting to watch, you know? We were still hoping for the quarterback, but Dulcich had shown some flashes where you're like, all right, Dulcich may really have something. Give me some confidence that the offense will be fun to watch because it's just been a slog since 2016.
Good question here. Ever seen a tight end reverse? You got Brock Bowers. You should see that 5-6 times in a full season.
You know what he's referring to, Mike? That's our guy Flax who loves sarcasm. That was the very first play of the Rich Scangarello era. They're facing the Raiders with Vic Fangio, late Monday night game. And Noah Fant, who was never considered to be the most fluid of hips kind of guy, they decided they'd pull the old tight end reverse for the first game ever. So
negative net gain.
Oh, yeah. It was a disaster. It went about like you thought it would. I think 3 plays later, they turned it over, and it just continued. It let us know the Vic Fangio era wasn't going to feel terribly different than the Vance Joseph era, which has now not felt terribly different than the old Nate Hackett era. So it's been quite a bit. It ain't the Taylor Swift eras. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, new era dropping, I guess, tonight. That's what my daughter
Is
told
it tonight?
Me. Yeah, it's a big some Dead Poets Society or something like that. We'll move on from that there, Andy. But you know the thing that I find interesting is I coached against Riley Moss when I was at University of Minnesota. This guy can play.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's a young player between the ears. He is smart. He's physically developed. I believe that last season was a bit of a wasted year for Riley Moss because I think the guy has a natural knack for creating takeaways. He's a turnover creator. That's what he is. And he's very smart. He studies the game. He studies quarterbacks and their tendencies. Riley Moss better be the starter opposite Patrick Surtain this coming fall. He has to be, because why would you draft him in was it 3rd round pick?
Yes.
Why would you pick a Riley Moss in the 3rd round and he gets 29 snaps total?
Mike, on top of it, the word all through OTAs and part of camp was he was actually looking pretty good. We were hyping him up, and then the next thing you know, they won't put him on the field. How Riley Moss, Marvin Mims, Drew Sanders, Drew Sanders as an edge player was a good player. We had a lot of people telling us, so if you're going to force him to be an inside linebacker, that's not what he is. So we'll see. They need linebackers. They need rush guys. Have you even covered? I mean, if they were to get a true edge rusher, I know Bronco fans have let us know on our various shows, in no world do they want to see defense be the top pick. But I think if you can get yourself a true, really good pass rusher, that's where maybe Bronco fans need to be excited.
Yeah, and the question right now is if there's any world that exists that Dallas Turner starts dropping because all the quarterbacks go early, the receivers go early, Brock Bowers go early. If you're sitting there at 12 and say 9, 10, Dallas Turner's still available, that might be, that guy's a difference maker. And he showed his ability at Alabama and at the combine that he can play in space, as a true 2nd level backer, but he is an elite pass rusher and elite athletic traits. Like, that's a guy that changes you right away. And then you could have a nice rotation, and I do like the young pieces at edge. I like Nick Benito. I think he's going to be a good player. I do like Baron Browning. I think he's got the ability to go from speed to power as a pass rusher, and he's going to get more refined as he gets more time. Jonathan Cooper is, I think, a really good 1st and 2nd down, kind of close side defensive end that can play over the tight end. But you do need that ballistic pass rusher, the guy that strikes some fear into this division. And let's call it like it is. You're going to need it, because in the AFC West, new kid on the block is going to be your San Diego, now Los Angeles Superchargers. And they're going to have a team with Jim Harbaugh running the ball at you and play action in you with Justin Herbert as your string puller. And that's going to be something to deal with. Patrick Mahomes ain't going anywhere. And then my biggest fear, Andy, just solely as a Broncos analyst, commentator, somebody who talks about the Broncos now all the time, my fear is that Michael Penix Jr. gets picked up by the Las Vegas Raiders. And that scares me. It really does, because if they take an offensive approach to push the ball vertically down the field, Michael Penix Jr. will be the best quarterback in this draft class as a downfield thrower. And then you have Devontae Adams that's just going to love having the quarterback that he didn't have last season. Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo. Those guys aren't vertical, throw the ball down the field type guys. And you'd have it in Michael Penix Jr. So you're going to need some pass rushers. You bring up a really good point.
What about Jared Verse? We keep seeing Jared Verse mocked there quite a bit out of Florida State. What do you think of him?
I think his production, his film is absolutely elite. I was very underwhelmed, as a top 15 pick from the physical traits at the combine. Maybe I'm putting too much stock into what I saw with my own eyeballs at the combine, but the drop off from a Dallas Turner and a Latu from UCLA to a Jared Verse, just physical traits. It's pretty significant. I think Jared Verse is probably a late 1st rounder in terms of his actual value based off of the totality of the evaluation. I do like Jared Verse, but that defense was absolutely stacked when they were healthy. And Jared Verse, I think benefited from being on a defense that had so many issues for an offense to deal with.
Well, Latu is available in most mocks. Just people are worried about the injury history there, right?
Yeah, and his injury history scares me a little bit more. And I know it sounds crazy. It scares me a little bit more than the injury history of Michael Penix Jr. Because Latu, he's had a neck fusion surgery within, I think, the last 2 years. That's a little bit concerning for a guy that's going to be a trench guy. How much longevity you get out of somebody that has a neck fusion? That's a big question. You could call me crazy. You could say I'm stupid. You could say the same thing about Michael Penix Jr. What I see about Michael Penix Jr. is that most of his surgeries occurred 2-3 years ago, 3 years ago, when he was playing at Indiana behind one of the worst offensive lines in all of Power 5 football. And as a developing young athlete, and that's in the rear view. He's played 2 seasons of completely healthy football. So I don't have as big a fear about Michael Penix Jr. because I think he's transformed his game from being a guy that used his legs probably too much at Indiana to a guy now that truly does play from the pocket, even so much as that his total rushing yards this year were 8 yards, I think. That's all he had as a rusher. And I don't think that's because he's limited athletically. It's because I think he's gotten smart and he realized that he's got this great gift in his left arm and use that thing. And that's always been a complaint of Russell Wilson is that he always was kind of a, look to scramble first type of guy. That ain't going to be Michael Penix Jr.
All right, you know what? We got to wrap it up because the Sean Payton press conference is about to start. I'm sure we're all kind of curious to hear about some of the moves, or at least what they're thinking about, or what we'll get. Who knows? It may just be more of what we got at the combine, but we'll do this again next week. We'll jump back on early in the week and see how we're feeling and what new rumors have popped up. And who knows? Maybe someone actually has the guts to make a trade by then, but somehow I doubt it. Mike, thank you. Everybody out there, we had quite a few viewers for doing this for their very first time. And let's be honest, we just kind of threw it together. So we'll try to tweet out some notice ahead of time when we do this again. And we'll keep doing it even all through OTAs and whatnot. And you guys let us know what you want to hear, what you want us to talk about. And we'll try to oblige. For now, though, we're going to say goodbye. And we'll talk to you next week with more draft coverage. Catch us both on Altitude Sports Radio 92.5.